Called off my wedding after discovering my fiancé's frugality meant no guests, no reception, and a coupon honeymoon. I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I've been with my fiancé, who's 32, for 3 years now. When I first met him, he'd only been out of a brutal, financially abusive marriage for a couple of years. His ex-wife bled him dry, not just emotionally, but literally financially. She demanded expensive jewelry, then trashed or gave it away in fits of rage. There were designer clothes and shoes, endless Caribbean vacations, and big cars and houses, all on his dime. When it finally ended, she took him for everything that wasn't nailed down in the divorce. But here's the catch: my fiancé is extremely well off. He earns well into the six figures, nearly hit 7, and inherited several millions from his grandfather. His parents also gifted him and his siblings a few million more, so, despite the financial trauma, he's not hurting for cash. He'll never want for anything. Last year, I moved into his home. It's worth a small fortune. I don't pay rent, but I split the bills and buy our food, and I pay for all my clothes and jewelry. My own career is solid, I can support myself. But, honestly, things have gotten worse, and I feel miserable these days. When I first moved in, I was shocked. His house was practically empty, just dusty, hand-me-down furniture and maybe 3 forks total in the kitchen. You wouldn't believe how cold it was. He refused to put on the heating so much that the whole place felt clammy, bordering on moldy. There weren't even curtains. No decorations, nothing cozy, just a cold, empty shell. His ex had taken absolutely everything that wasn't bolted down, and he was too cheap to replace a thing. Picture a $1 million house that looks like no one cares for it. I admit, I'm grateful to live there, it's beautiful, and I could never afford this on my own, but I never wanted to live in squalor, either. Out of sheer necessity, I started buying kitchen supplies, picking up cheap furniture where I could. But it wasn't long before I was dipping into my savings nonstop, and nothing changed. I checked out curtains, ridiculously expensive for a place with so many windows. I realized I was bleeding money into a house that wasn't even mine, and he was content to let me do it. I confronted him and told him I needed some money from him to actually furnish his house. He blew up, accusing me of being with him just for his money. It hurt. I pointed to everything I'd already spent on his house, all the gifts, the trips I paid for, because he pays for nothing. He insists on paying for nothing, just to make sure I'm not a gold digger, while I'm spending my savings to make his life better. If we ever break up, I leave with nothing, the house isn't mine, and I've sunk all my money into it. He wants a prenup, and I'm fine with that, truly. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm the one being used. I'm jealous of his ex-wife. She got the royal treatment, a $10,000 white gold diamond engagement ring, a proposal on a luxury cruise, the works. My proposal? Rhodium-plated Swarovski, maybe $100. He proposed during a picnic in the park, which I had to organize, pay for, and cook for. Honestly, I almost said no out of pure disappointment. But I swallowed my feelings, afraid that saying anything would make me sound greedy. I don't want to be the one funding a millionaire's lifestyle. He's all smiles as long as I pay for everything, but if it's his wallet, suddenly it's frivolous or unnecessary. I know how to live frugally, hell, I grew up with nothing, but at least when I pay for my own lifestyle, there isn't a mountain of someone else's money looming over me, making me feel small and ashamed. Am I wrong for wanting to call off a wedding over all of this? Because I love him, but I can't help picturing our wedding, cheap and sparse compared to the spectacle he threw for his ex. What about future kids? Will our children only get luxuries if I pay for them? What if I ever become a stay-at-home mom? Will I have to beg him to turn the heating on? Let me add some clarity, because I know some people wonder if I'm being lied to about the abuse. His family and friends each told me stories independently, confirming how awful things were with his ex. She truly was more monstrous than I ever realized, stealing his grandmother's heirloom jewelry after his grandfather died, even while his grandma had Alzheimer's. She lied about being gifted those things. Everyone knew she was hated by grandma. Looking back, I realize I didn't see what's happening to me. In a weird way, he's punishing me for what she did, almost as if he's determined to prove how little he can give and still keep me around. He told me he left the house so empty because he was depressed after his wife stripped it bare, even the curtains were gone. He said he wanted a cozy home again but didn't know where to start. Just to be clear, his house is paid off, granddad's money, his utility bills are actually low, thanks to all the solar panels and insulation. It's almost funny how cheap it is to be rich. I never asked for designer things, I'm an IKEA girl, I love refurbishing secondhand stuff. I'm actually pretty thrifty. About my jealousy over his ex's lifestyle, a $10,000 ring honestly feels stupid. I don't want that, I'd be terrified of losing it every day. I don't need a flashy wedding, but for his ex, he did something. He put in effort because she wanted it. With me, it often feels like he's testing me, proving how little he can give me, making me feel like the bargain bin version. His vision for our wedding? Cheaper than my actually broke cousins. I almost feel like he enjoys showing me how little he can spend, like he gets a kick out of it. We're dangerously close to literally washing paper plates for the big day. I even suggested selling the mansion, downscaling to a house that fits us, especially because his ex picked this one, and it just feels strange living in a place I could never have bought. So many huge windows, don't get me started. But he flat out refused. He loves this house. I just feel intimidated by the whole thing. I haven't talked to him yet, but I need to put the wedding on pause and insist on counseling. I've realized I might be too much of a people pleaser, letting him control me with the ghost of his ex. I'm already looking into individual counseling, because I know I need to break this pattern. And, honestly, I've decided to separate from him for a while, just to clear my head and figure out what I truly want. Update 1. I hope this all makes sense because, honestly, I'm still reeling from everything that's happened. My world has been turned upside down, and lately I've been terribly confused, exhausted, and just not doing well. Everything changed so quickly, and it feels like a whirlwind crashed through my life. After everything that built up between us, I decided to take a drastic step that I don't think I'd have mustered up the courage to do on my own. I finally went to therapy. I took the whole day off just to try and quiet my racing mind. Therapy opened my eyes to a lot of things that I guess I always felt but never fully admitted. I am a massive people pleaser. I realized that somewhere along the line I took on the responsibility of saving him, like I could be the one to fix whatever was broken. Worst of all, I've let this poisonous little voice convince me that asking for even the most basic things, or wishing he'd spend some effort and money on me, means I'm a gold digger. I've internalized that idea so deeply, I practically flinch every time I want or need something. Now, I've started weekly sessions to work on myself. I have a long road ahead, but I am finally doing it for me. It struck me during all this, if any of my exes, and I mean any, ever treated me how he did, I would have walked away without a second thought. And yes, in those relationships, I made more money than they did, but I never felt like I had to prove I wasn't in it for something more. From the start with him, I got it into my head that because he was wealthy, I needed to prove myself worthy. That I had to show, relentlessly, that I wasn't after his money. It twisted our entire dynamic, and twisted me right along with it. When things reached their breaking point, I called one of his siblings whom I've grown close to. I just poured everything out to her, all my confusions and hurts. She wasn't surprised, she only seemed terribly sad about how unhappy he was making me. She revealed something I'd never truly realized. Since we started dating, he always believed I was out of his league. He couldn't get it into his head why I wanted to be with him. So of course he thought, it must be my money. She'd even talked to him before, trying to convince him to treat me better, especially after that awful proposal. She was furious when she told me about it. A lot of what she said confused and hurt me a bit. I almost wished she'd told me all this sooner, but she explained she'd thought it wasn't her place. She also described how she and her own husband managed their finances. She's the higher earner, and still, they found a way. It made me see how warped my relationship had become, the way our money, our value, our roles got tangled up under this weight. This conversation made me realize I needed to get out, at least for now, and actually put myself first for once. I packed a bag with my essentials. I haven't found a place yet, but I'm going to stay with my parents while I get my head and heart in order. I decided I needed at least 6 months apart, space to rebuild myself, and I made sure all my things were in the car, just in case. I honestly had no idea how the conversation would go. Then came the hardest part, telling him. I waited for him to get home, even though he was hours late, because I couldn't sleep another night with this heavy, painful lie pretending everything was fine. I sat down with my notes. I had written out what I needed to say because I was absolutely terrified. I've never been this nervous in my life, and I was dreading how it would wound him. I didn't know if he'd get angry, if he'd beg, if he'd just be cold. I opened up as best I could. I told him straight that I was moving out and that I wanted to pause our engagement. As soon as I said it, he went very quiet and just sat, like he had vanished inside himself. I told him how much it hurt when he called me a gold digger, that I was completely done walking on eggshells, done feeling guilty for wanting the bare minimum. I told him I was deeply unhappy and felt totally neglected. I explained that after 3 years of showing up for him, if he still didn't believe I was genuinely here for him, then he'd never believe it. If after all this time, he truly thought it was about the money, then it was never going to change. Still, he just stayed quiet, numb. I dug deeper, told him how the incessant comparisons to his ex were twisted and unfair, how he punished me for her mistakes, and how that was downright abusive. I admitted it. Constantly measuring me against her made me start comparing myself too, thinking maybe she really was worth more. It broke me. The irony burned. He always complained his ex was ungrateful, that nothing he did was enough. Except, with me, he barely did anything at all, and I was supposed to be thankful for the privilege of picking up the bill. I poured out that the truth was he wasn't ready for marriage, nowhere near it. I confided how scary it was to imagine having kids or building a life together under these conditions, how much I feared he wouldn't take care of me, especially if I were a stay-at-home mom. I called him what he needed to hear, abusive, a user. Even as my anger started to take over and my careful script fell apart, I couldn't stop. He barely reacted, his face was a blank mask. The silence was unbearable, so I just decided to leave. Only when I stood up did he finally break. He asked me, desperate, if I was just pausing the wedding or ending it for good. Did he still have a chance? Was this truly over? He wanted to know if he'd lost me forever, or if he could still fix it. I told him bluntly I needed out of this house, his ex's palace of sadness, and I just couldn't live there anymore. I said he needed therapy, especially for our finances, and we needed a real separation. If, and only if, he got individual counseling, I'd be open to couples therapy. But the separation, I needed it. He begged me not to leave, pleaded for another chance, but for once, I stood my ground. I just told him to think about it, then I left. That's when he finally broke down. He started crying. I hadn't seen real emotion from him in so long, but it hurt to watch. Later, sometime in the early hours of the morning, he sent me a long text. He was wrecked, couldn't sleep, promising me everything: therapy, selling his house, buying a smaller home, swearing he'd take care of me no matter what, make a real home together. He promised he'd help me decorate, make it ours, begged me to come home. But the truth is, it's not home to me now. Right now, I just feel empty and exhausted. I've been sleeping most of the day. There's this lingering guilt inside me, but also, if I'm being honest, a small sense of relief. I don't know if I even want to go back, even if he keeps all those promises. I honestly don't know. I'm deeply unsettled right now, and I just need time to process everything. Update 2. As soon as I left, I felt both terrified and free. I started searching for an apartment I could afford, and thankfully, my parents stepped in to help. I'm staying with them for now, saving up, and finally catching my breath. For the time being, things are over between us. I've cut off all contact, at least for now. During that first week, he transferred a large sum of money to my account, as if that would somehow fix everything, or prove something. That only made things worse. It just drove home the fact that he truly believed money was what kept me tethered to him. I calculated the value of the couch I left behind, deducted it, and sent every last penny back. After that, I asked him to have no further contact with me. To his credit, he's respected my wishes. I feel free. For the first time in so long, I don't feel guilty for having simple needs. Wanting to be taken out occasionally, wanting warmth in winter, basic things. The longer I spend away from him, the more clearly I see that what I went through was abuse. I have an autoimmunity problem, and I remember shivering in that cold house, my condition flaring up, yet he still insisted on keeping the heat down. He cared more about saving maybe $100 a year than about my health or comfort. Recently, I heard he finally put that miserable house, the Palace of Sadness, as I called it, on the market. I've seen the listings and, honestly, it makes me happy to know he's following through on some of the promises he'd made too late. I heard from his sister that he started therapy, and I truly hope he sticks with it. At least there's a glimmer of hope that he's working on himself. As for me, I'm building a life I can call my own. I'm even thinking about getting a puppy. If I ever did give him another shot, it would have to be a completely fresh start, no picking up where we left off. For now, I just want to focus on myself, take it slow, and maybe even try dating again, this time, on my own terms. Update 3. He is so far in my rearview mirror now that I truly don't care what he's doing anymore. Looking back, it's honestly shocking how much worse things got with him over time. At some point, I realized he actually seemed to enjoy watching me spiral as my savings dwindled and his own pile of money grew steadily higher. The more he had, the more control he had over me, and he knew it. He eventually sold the house. That's the last real update I have. He and his sister are no longer on speaking terms, which is a story in and of itself. The irony isn't lost on me. Her new social media profile picture is one with me in it. And I can't help but find that pretty funny, under the circumstances. As far as I know, he's still single. Meanwhile, I am absolutely, madly in love with my partner. Both of us have landed major promotions at work. We're not multimillionaires and probably never will be. We don't have the generational wealth he lords over everyone, but our home is warm and, most importantly, furnished. We plan spontaneous trips, we go out on dates, and our money is pooled in a way that feels fair and loving. My life now feels wealthy, not in the material sense, but in the love and care that fills every day. While he hoards his money and continues to live in squalor, I live in abundance of the things that truly matter. I've never told anyone this next part because I feared being recognized, and honestly, I was also terrified of even more judgment because I witnessed so much abuse and did far too little. He has children with his ex. Those kids are being abused, they sleep on broken beds, get the cheapest toys, and the only holidays are cut-rate, soulless trips. He never does anything fun with them, they live in the same cold, moldy house. The truth is, I was often paying for their toys, their trips, their moments of joy. I fought with him over those kids so many times. I stayed a lot longer than I should have, partly for their sake. They were such grateful, sweet kids. Seeing the way he was with the kids made me question so many stories he told about his ex. She is an amazing mom, and it breaks my heart knowing she's forced to leave her children, even if just for weekends, with that man. He only ever played the weekend warrior dad but gave nothing of himself. Now that I've admitted all of this, I feel that old, creeping weirdness about why I stayed as long as I did. I saw the abuse happening to those children, I recognized it in them, but somehow, I never saw it in myself. My only real wish now is that he stayed in therapy. I hope for their sake, those wonderful kids, that he's better now. I hope they're okay, wherever they are. Update 4. First off, that whole experience was just so bizarre. There I was, going through the motions at work, listening to stories to break up the monotony, and suddenly I thought, Wow, this sounds almost exactly like my, wait, hold up. I was stunned, especially because the story even included that confession buried 12 comments deep about just how incredible the lovemaking is with my partner. I couldn't help but blush. I felt so exposed, but also saved at the same time. I turned to that outlet because I needed something to tell me what I was feeling wasn't normal. I genuinely never realized how deeply my story resonated with others until I heard it reflected back to me. Listening, I could hear just how chaotic I sounded, how much I convinced myself he wasn't abusive, when all along I was just so desperately unhappy. I remember now how cold and alone I felt. It's confronting to relive that up close, to see how far I've really come. But once I took that leap, everything changed. Friends and coworkers came out of the woodwork to tell me how brave I was, how proud they were of me. I don't see that relationship or its end as a failure anymore, not even close. It stands as one of my greatest triumphs. It always looks simple in hindsight. Just leave, move on, things get better, right? But gods, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. I wish I could reach anyone who finds themselves dreading going home, feeling sad and alone in a relationship where it's always you making the effort. Where you're begging for the barest scrap of respect, the minimum treatment, and nothing changes. Please, do the hard thing, because easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. It's true. Now, me and my partner bought a house together. We are still ridiculously happy. After our very first date, I texted my best friend and said, I am marrying this guy. If he asks me tomorrow, I'm running to the church. This relationship feels like a Spielberg romance, it's that unbelievable. And we're well past those first, dizzying months. This isn't limerence, this is real. Even the puppy, who's no longer a tiny fluffball but a massive, goofy boy, is smitten with my partner. My dog picked his favorite person, and what do you know, it's the same person I did. We both fell head over heels for the same human. I never shared pictures of him before, I worried about being recognized. But that almost seems like a crime now. Maybe it's time to let the world see how happy life looks on this side. Update 5. I honestly thought this chapter of my life was completely closed, but life has a twisted sense of humor. About 2 weeks ago, I was grocery shopping when I ran into his ex-wife. Yes, that ex-wife, the one I'd spent years hearing horror stories about, the supposed monster who bled him dry. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked normal. Tired, sure, but just like any other working mom juggling kids and groceries, her youngest was clinging to her leg while she tried to corral the older one away from the candy aisle. Something about seeing her in that moment, so human, so ordinary, made all those stories he told me feel even more wrong. She recognized me immediately. I braced myself for confrontation, maybe anger, but instead she just looked relieved. You're the one who lived with him after me, right? She asked quietly. When I nodded, she glanced around nervously and said, can we talk? Please. Just for a few minutes? We ended up at a coffee shop nearby while her kids played in the little corner area. What she told me turned my stomach. Those expensive vacations he complained about? She showed me receipts on her phone. She'd paid for most of them with her own inheritance money. The jewelry he claimed she demanded? Wedding gifts from her grandmother that she'd brought into the marriage. When she left, she only took what was legally hers, but he told everyone, including lawyers, that she was stealing from him. The worst part? She never actually got much in the divorce. Most of his wealth was in trusts and investments that were protected. She walked away with barely enough for a deposit on a small apartment and has been struggling as a single mom ever since. Meanwhile, he'd been painting himself as the victim who lost everything. But here's where it gets really twisted. She told me about the kids' weekends with him. Remember how I said they were living in squalor with him? It turns out that wasn't post-divorce depression, that's just who he is. She said even when they were married, he'd make her beg for basic household needs. He'd control every purchase, question every expense, then turn around and tell people she was bleeding him dry when she bought groceries or school supplies for their children. I used to think I was going crazy, she said, tears in her eyes. He'd tell me I was being wasteful and dramatic for wanting heat in winter, then tell his family I was demanding and high maintenance. I started recording our conversations just to remind myself what actually happened. The manipulation was identical to what I'd experienced, but she'd endured it for 7 years and had 2 kids to worry about. She finally left when he started using money to control the children's basic needs, withholding things like winter coats and proper shoes to teach them the value of money. She thanked me for what I'd done for her kids during my time there. Apparently, they still talk about the toys I bought them, the trips I organized. She said it was the only brightness in their lives during those weekends, and she'd always wondered who was behind those small kindnesses. As we were leaving, she hesitated, then said, "There's something else you should know. He's been asking people about you. My lawyer friend mentioned he's been trying to find out where you work, where you live now. I thought you should know, just in case." That conversation shook me more than I expected. Not because I miss him or want him back, but because it confirmed something I'd always suspected deep down. I was never the problem. Neither was she. He's just fundamentally broken in ways that therapy might not even fix. I told my partner about the encounter that night. Instead of being jealous or uncomfortable, he held me and said, "I'm glad you got closure, and I'm glad she got to tell someone the truth." That's the difference, right there. A secure person doesn't see their partner's past as a threat, they see it as part of what makes them who they are. The next morning, I decided to change my gym and started varying my routine. I haven't seen any signs that he's actually looking for me, but I'd rather be safe. It's funny, a year ago, the thought of him trying to find me might have given me some twisted hope. Now it just makes me want to protect the peace I've built. My partner and I have been talking about taking the next step, not just living together, but really building something permanent. We looked at rings last weekend, just for fun, but I found myself getting genuinely excited about the idea. With him, marriage feels like a celebration of what we already have, not a trap or a test. Sometimes I wonder if his ex and I will stay in touch. She seemed genuinely relieved to have someone who understood, and honestly, so was I. We both survived something that could have broken us, and we both found our way to better lives. That feels like something worth acknowledging, even if we never speak again. The strangest part of all this? I genuinely hope he gets the help he needs, not for my sake or even for his ex's, but for those kids. They deserve so much better than what they're getting. But that's not my responsibility anymore, and for the first time, I can say that without guilt. Update 6. I never thought I'd be writing another update, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 3 months have passed since I ran into his ex-wife at the grocery store, and I honestly thought that chapter was permanently closed. I was wrong. My partner and I had just gotten back from a weekend trip to celebrate my birthday. We were exhausted but happy, dragging our luggage up the front steps, when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There, tucked under our doormat, was a small wrapped box with my name written in handwriting I recognized immediately. My hands were shaking as I unwrapped it. Inside was a vintage compass, not expensive, but clearly chosen with thought. The kind of thing I would have loved years ago, when I was still trying to convince myself that his small gestures meant something. There was no note, but there didn't need to be. I knew exactly who it was from and what it meant. He'd found me. My partner saw my face and immediately knew something was wrong. When I showed him the compass, his jaw tightened in a way I'd never seen before. "How did he get our address?" he asked, and honestly, I had no idea. We'd been so careful. That night, I called his ex-wife. I still had her number from our coffee shop encounter, and something told me she needed to know about this too. When I told her about the compass, there was a long silence before she said, "He did the same thing to me. Right before I filed for divorce, he started leaving little gifts. I thought it meant he was changing, that he finally understood how much he'd hurt me." "What happened?" I asked, though I was dreading the answer. "It escalated. First gifts, then letters, then showing up at my work. He told everyone he was trying to win me back, painted himself as the romantic husband fighting for his marriage. But the letters." She paused. "They weren't love letters. They were detailed accounts of everything I'd supposedly done wrong, how I'd ruined his life, how I owed him another chance. When I didn't respond, they got angry. My stomach dropped. Did he ever threaten you?" "Not directly. But he'd write things like, 'I know you're reading this and you can't hide from the truth forever.' He somehow knew things about my daily routine that he shouldn't have known. Where I got coffee, what time I left for work, which route I took to drop the kids at school. I felt sick. The compass suddenly felt less like a romantic gesture and more like a message, 'I know where you are.' The next morning, I found another gift. This time it was a small succulent in a terracotta pot, sitting on my car windshield in the office parking lot. The plant itself was sweet, the kind of thing the old me would have posted on social media with heart emojis. But now it felt sinister. He knew where I worked. He knew what car I drove. I called in sick and went home to find my partner already researching security systems. "We're installing cameras," he said without preamble. "And I'm working from home until we figure this out." That's when I made a decision that surprised even me. I called him. His voice when he answered was so familiar it made my chest ache for just a moment, until I remembered why I was calling. "I got your gifts," I said without any greeting. "Did you like them?" His voice sounded almost hopeful, like we were old friends catching up. "I need you to stop. Whatever this is, it needs to stop right now." There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his tone had shifted completely. "I just wanted to talk to you. To explain things. You never gave me a real chance to fix what I broke." "I gave you 3 years," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "And I don't owe you anything else, but you're with him now," and there was something in the way he said him that made my skin crawl. "You moved on so fast. Like I meant nothing to you." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. "You think I moved on fast? I was miserable for months after I left. I went to therapy. I rebuilt my entire sense of self-worth. That's not moving on fast, that's surviving what you did to me." "What I did?" His voice got sharper. "I loved you. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing," I said, and I meant it. "You made me pay for your ex-wife's imaginary crimes. You let me freeze in your house while you hoarded money like a dragon. You made me feel crazy for wanting basic human decency." The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. "Then, she got to you, didn't she?" "My ex. I know you talked to her." My blood went cold. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot of things. I know you're playing house with some guy who'll never be able to give you what I could. I know you're pretending to be happy, But you're not. You can't be. Not without me. I hung up and immediately called the police. The officer who took my report was kind but realistic. The gifts weren't technically threatening, and the phone call, while unsettling, wasn't illegal. But document everything, she told me. Take photos, save voicemails, keep a log of every contact. If it escalates, we'll have evidence. It escalated. The next gift appeared 2 days later, a framed photo of us from our first year together, back when I still thought I could save him. Someone had used a red marker to draw a heart around my face and cross out my partner, who wasn't even in the photo. Written on the back in that same handwriting was, "This is who you really are." That's when my partner made a call that surprised me. He contacted his ex-wife's lawyer, the one she'd mentioned knew about my ex's behavior. Turns out, this wasn't the first time he'd done this. There had been another woman between his ex-wife and me, someone who'd dated him for about 6 months and ended it when his controlling behavior became unbearable. She'd also received gifts, calls, and increasingly disturbing messages when she tried to move on. The pattern is always the same, the lawyer told us over the phone. He love bombs them in the beginning, then slowly takes control. When they try to leave, he convinces himself they just need to be reminded of how good things were. It's not romantic, it's possession. Armed with this information and the documentation from his previous behavior, we were able to get a restraining order. The judge granted it immediately, especially after his ex-wife testified about her own experiences. But here's the thing about restraining orders, they're just pieces of paper, they don't actually stop someone who's determined to ignore them. Yesterday, I came home to find my partner standing in our living room, facing the front door with his phone in his hand. "Don't turn around," he said quietly. "Just keep walking to the kitchen." My heart hammered as I followed his instruction, but I could see the reflection in our kitchen window. There, sitting in a car across the street, was a figure I recognized even from a distance. He'd been there for who knows how long, just watching our house. My partner had already called the police, and they arrived within minutes. By the time they got there, the car was gone, but our security cameras had caught everything. License plate, clear shot of his face, timestamp showing he'd been there for over an hour. He was arrested this morning for violating the restraining order. I should feel relieved, but instead I just feel drained. This man who I once loved, who I tried so hard to help and understand, has become someone I barely recognize. Or maybe this is who he always was, and I was just too deep in the manipulation to see it. His ex-wife texted me this morning, "I'm sorry you're going through this, but I'm grateful you're not going through it alone. Having someone who believes you makes all the difference." She's right. My partner has been incredible through all of this, protective without being controlling, supportive without making it about him. The difference between how he's handling this crisis and how my ex handled every minor inconvenience is stark. Tonight, we're staying at his parents' house, just to be safe while everything gets sorted legally. Our dog seems to sense the tension and hasn't left my side all day. As I write this, my partner is making tea and talking quietly with his mom about upgrading our security system, and I'm struck by how normal this feels despite everything. How supported I feel. The compass is sitting in an evidence bag at the police station now, along with the other gifts. I hope that's the last I ever see of any of it. I hope that's the last I ever see of him.